Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Friday. Congratulations on making it another week. The month of April seemed like it lasted about 6 months. May is at least moving along a little bit. This morning for coffee break, I've got a little tribute to Carlos's bake shop in New York City. Good coffee. The cookies are just the best. I can't wait to get back to New York City and get back on a plane again sometime soon. Speaking of this week, we've had a really good week of coffee breaks. So if you haven't had a chance to go back and listen to some of our instructors, and even our marketing supervisor, Patty Mathieson, spoke on yesterday's coffee break and dove into some lessons she learned, a question behind the question. So I'd asked you to go back this week. We had some great news, a question behind the question. So I'd asked you to go back this week. We had some great news from Wayne Hoover, Executive Director of II, who spoke about a new process, an opportunity for everybody to get their CFI designation, really, and not have to leave their couch. You know, you can take from the training through the test and not have to get up, unless I suppose you want to shower. But to be honest, nobody's doing that now anyway. So some really neat stuff this week. If you missed that, those are on our YouTube channel, and we got a great lineup next week as well. Today, I wanted to talk about contact tracing, which might seem a little bit out of our scope and out of our realm. And what I wanted to discuss is all the interview skills that most of you already have that you're using when you're interviewing maybe a victim, a witness, or potentially even a suspect, and you're getting an alibi or trying to remember about a moment or a day and trying to figure out what they were doing and who they were with. Translates to what contact tracers are trying to do, or what this actually is. And you've probably heard this term in your state or by our federal government as a measurement of one of the multiple measurements of when certain regions and states can reopen, as having a minimum number of contact tracers. And really what their goal is to identify if somebody's been tested positive for a virus, is having a conversation with them, an interview essentially, to try to determine who they've been in contact with during that stage of time that they could have been contagious and passed that virus on. And not just who they were in contact with, but more specifically, who they were in contact with for extended periods of time and potentially in a closer proximity. And so I want you to think about that. If I just asked any of you, or you just thought back, where was I over the last 2 weeks? And a lot of you might think I haven't really left my house. Some of you are still going to an office. Some of you are going to work. Some of you, depending on your location, may have been at the grocery store or the retail store. And so when you start to think about where you were over the past couple of weeks, think about this from an interviewer's perspective. You may have gone for a walk around the neighborhood, but you forgot that you bumped into your neighbors on Tuesday and spent 10 minutes chatting them up. You may have stopped to get gas on your way home from work, but you forgot the credit card machine didn't work and you had to go inside the gas station and you had interaction with the cashier. The job of a contact tracer is to try to trigger those memories and try to remember what situations you may have been in over that time period. And that can be really difficult, not only as the subject, even if you're voluntarily wanting to provide where you were. And to be honest, I'm sure there's some people that may not want to provide those details. Maybe they violated some social distancing guidelines. Maybe they went somewhere that nobody else knows that's where they were at. And so you might have some difficulty getting that information. Some of the things that we talk about when we discuss the cognitive interview, or just interviewing victims or witnesses, is the importance of open-ended questions, right? Instead of a leading question, tell me what you were doing Tuesday at 9 a.m., walk me through that day start to finish, is more open-ended, allowing the witness or the person you're interviewing to kind of tell the story themselves, right? Tell me about this week. Tell me what sticks out from this week. Allow their memory to kind of dictate the conversation. And then we ask probing questions from there. We listen for words that might indicate omission. So if it was, well, I went to the office on Tuesday, I was there for a while, I left around 5 o'clock, eventually got home, and then made dinner and stayed in the house. Well, eventually went home might indicate that between leaving the office and getting to the house, what does that mean? Eventually, did they stop at the grocery store? Did they stop at a friend's house? Did they go get gas? What other interactions may they have had? And we ask expansion questions. Another great idea when you're interviewing somebody, you're trying to help probe or trigger their memory, is allowing for silence. Oftentimes, many of you that are used to conducting an interview that might be accusatory, there's not a lot of silence potentially in that conversation. But when you want somebody just to tell their version of the story, allow them to try to remember an event, you have to ask an open-ended question, allow them to answer, and not interrupt until that thought process is complete. A lot of times the interviewers themselves might close off that question too early or close out that answer too early by asking their immediate follow-up question. And that conditions your subject to not have to think and put themselves back in the scene and try to recall what they were doing on that day. And the last piece of advice, and we could go on forever talking about the importance of memory triggering type questions and not contaminating their memory. The last couple of things is asking somebody to tell a story in the reverse order. And just think about if you've ever misplaced your keys or your phone, you start to retrace your steps. This helps increase our cognitive load and also allows us to maybe remember things we didn't think about as we went from the story from start to finish instead of going backwards. And the last idea, and one that can be really helpful, and even think about this yourself, if I just asked you, tell me what you were doing the last 2 weeks, that could be difficult. But if instead you drew out a timeline, you drew out from Sunday through Saturday for those 2 weeks, and you started to plot out, well, on Sunday I know I went and we had a fire at a friend's house. We all sat around a campfire. Now, as you're writing that down, you can start to remember who was there, what you did on the way to your friend's house. Maybe you stopped at the grocery store, what you did afterwards. Then on Monday, you can start to draw out and you start to actually map out what you did. Putting it in writing and having a visual aid can help you trigger your memory. Just like when you write a grocery list and after you wrote 2 or 3 things, you've got another 15 that start to come to mind. I would ask you, if some of you are dealing with potential furloughs or looking for jobs in this mean time that we have until life gets back to somewhat normal, look into your local Department of Health, whether it's in the state or region, and they're hiring a lot of contact tracers right now looking for these interview skills. So it might be a good opportunity for you to have. To finish up for today, it's Friday of a long holiday weekend. But let's not forget the importance of Memorial Day and why we have an extra day off this weekend. So this coffee and the coffee break, I'll dedicate to the men and women who have served our country and given their life to the country. So enjoy the weekend, but remember why we have the chance to celebrate. Have a good day, and we'll see you guys next week.